Wilson Morales, Black Women TV. Hello, Anne-Marie.
Hi, how are you?
Good. The common theme that I see between the shorts are acceptance, but I think yours is the one that had more humor than the others. Was that intentional?
Yeah, absolutely. I've really drawn, especially for this element, I wanted to tell a story that explored, the fear of not being accepted. And I think a lot of times that portrayal, can be seen tragically. And even though there's a truth to that, right, of not being accepted and the tragicness within it, there's also the joy and beauty of what it means to be different and what it means to be an outsider. And I wanted to explore that with humor and this element that does bring joy and celebrates those differences.
Not just humor, you throw in the whole vampire, werewolves, I'm thinking like, is this going to be, what's that movie they used to always see with the vampire and werewolves? With Kate Beckinsale?
Yeah, totally. A whole new world of monsters and whatever else. And it became a vehicle of, I myself am Mexican American and queer, and I wanted the character to be that, but those elements of her be celebrated and normalized. And so the vehicle became this sort of monster element, this vampire element. And the monster world and monster stories, to me, have always been the story of an outsider, of being feared and misunderstood. And I've always really related to those stories. And I think anyone who has felt like an outsider can relate to that. So it just became the perfect vehicle to kind of take Val on this journey while still celebrating the beautiful things about her.
The thing about a short film is that the challenge is to tighten it up, because obviously there's a time frame as far as how much you want to do. You got a lot packed in there: Mexican American family, vampire, acceptance, all that stuff. How much was it helpful to have a mentor and keeping you on board and on the same page without going out of bounds?
Oh, so helpful. I got partnered with two women who are part of Disney Animation and responsible for Moana and Raya and the Last Dragon and had their hand in Frozen. And I remember even one of our first script writing sessions where they were giving me notes and feedback and really trying to help me narrow exactly what I want to say and be specific to that. And one of the notes they gave me was, okay, what's Val's let it go moment? And to hear that was such a profound thing from these women responsible for these incredible stories, and being told that in the Disney Animation building where all these amazing films have been made that really affected my childhood and my life was so profound. And I will always take their messages from this project forward, and the tools I learned from them, I will take forward for the rest of my life.
That's what I was going to say. What's your takeaway, obviously, as a director, from doing this short that you do want when you go into your next project, whether it be a short film or a feature film?
Yeah, I learned so many things through this project because the Launchpad program was so loving and supportive and such a community and so open to allowing each of us filmmakers to ask the questions we always wanted to ask and to feel comfortable approaching them and work alongside the effects department of Disney and music and casting. And it all became just such a quick paced masterclass of how to work in a studio setup. And all of those lessons I will take forward every single project going forward.
And when you add a humor into it, how many takes does it take to get it right? Because it's one thing you have the story to tell, the acceptance and all of that stuff, but when you have to land in the moments when it's supposed to be a laughing point to it, was that challenging? Like, was there a couple of takes where like, let's rewrite it again or so forth?
Absolutely. It's definitely a learning experience with comedy and improv and whatever else. And I think it really becomes such an enjoyable experience when you have actors you're working with that bring a lot of fun to it. And, between Kayla, who is incredible and has such comedic skills, and also working with Cristela Alonso, who has always been one of my heroes and someone I look up to as a Mexican-American comedian and actress. And she played the mom in the story. That day on set was so fun. Just hearing what she had to say to add to it, and all of the family together added their own things, and there were some special surprises in that I didn't script and that we found together. That was really, really fun.
Did a great job. Looking forward to your next project. Take care.
Thank you, Wilson.
Wilson Morales from Black Women TV. Hello, Aqsa. How's it going?
Hi, Wilson. Thank you so much
Good.
for having me.
So, when I watched this short, I said, okay, what are we talking about? It's like, I'm also too getting educated in what's happening. For most of the shorts that I've seen, I think the common theme is acceptance. So what went into making this film, and, was it easier to put it together in 20 minutes as opposed to a feature length?
I think the 20 minutes definitely was the harder part, and I think that's why what was so important for me is when we came on board, I had this idea and I wrote a script, and then through the Launchpad program and through the mentors that were assigned to us, the executives, they helped me develop this further and further. And the more we did it, the more focused we got. Like every scene, every dialogue had more of an intention to why it was there and had more meaning. So there was no fluff in between. That's the thing with shorts, you just don't have time in between to just like meander, especially when you're telling a story like American Eid, which has so much to say and so much character development that needs to happen in such a short time. So yeah, it was definitely challenging, but through the process, through the Launchpad process, it was the most rewarding experience. I learned so much about visual storytelling and being efficient.
It's almost like when you're writing an article and they tell you 900, then you got to cut it down to 7, then you got to cut it down to 5. And you're like, okay, we have the essence of what it is about. Now we gotta get the sisters together and so forth, and how do you do it in a short time frame? What did you learn in the process of doing this that you can take on to your next project?
I think the biggest thing I learned was the idea of being very more focused. Like every decision you make has to be filtered through the theme, through what actually you're trying to say. And even with theme, like the idea of acceptance is such a big umbrella term. So you have to find what exactly about that acceptance are you trying to say as an artist, and then filter everything through that. And then every character, everything they say, every scene, every moment becomes a version of that, a different facet of that almost. Yeah. And I feel like that is one thing I'm going to take forward with every storytelling, because at the end of the day, if you know what you're trying to say, you can say it in 30 seconds, you can say it in 3 minutes, 20 minutes, 120 or 8 hours, but as long as you nail that, and that is the hardest part to nail.
Obviously going into this, there's the research, because as someone like myself is trying to figure out, is this real? Is the culture real? What they're saying in terms of the fasting and all of that stuff, so how much went into that before you started shooting?
I feel like for me, the biggest thing was to biggest challenge for me was facing this idea, like when I'm trying to educate somebody about a foreign to them, for example, to the Western audience, right? Like what Eid or Ramadan is. I initially started by thinking like, oh, maybe I should compare it to something like Christmas, because then there is some anchor for the audience to understand. But the more I developed the script with my mentors and executives, we realized like that is filtering it through a Western gaze, and we don't need to do that. I grew up in Kuwait and I watched everything about Christmas, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and it didn't get filtered through my lens. I just learned through it. So it's about time that maybe the Western side of the world can learn about cultures and religions, and not have it could just stand on its own. It doesn't need to get filtered or compared to anything.
Well, you were able to put this thing together in 20 minutes. We got the beginning, we got the middle, and we got the end. If they were to tell you to expand it, to make it into a feature length, would that be more challenging, or would it be a little easier exploring characters and then still putting it together?
I think it would definitely be easy, because now there are so many scenes that I think we could explore, like Zainab's character more, like what her world looks like, the Z's character, what her world looks like more, and more of Amina going around and talking to her friends, more of what the family, like the parents, like what are their immigrant experience like, how does that compare to the children? So there's definitely, like, again, because I know what my theme is, I can filter through that and create scenes to create a more fuller picture of an immigrant family experience, because right now it's predominantly from Amina's point of view. So by adding these different point of views, I can tell about that theme from different angles and make it more nuanced in a feature length.
But for now, we have the short. You did a good. Congratulations. We'll see you down the road.
Thank you so much, Wilson. Appreciate it.
Wilson Morales, Black Women TV. Hey, Stephanie, how's it going?
It's great. Thanks for being here. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So, of the shorts, this was a little bit different because I know some of the other ones, the common theme was acceptance. And in a way, this one is, so what went about in terms of telling this story and why the story?
Well, I think we could talk about the other films and that they're all deeply personal stories about feeling unheard or unloved or unwanted. And I think my film is about sharing those feelings, sharing the difficult things, sharing your sadness, and being reminded that in doing so, you create community. You find the other people who have gone through the same things as you. You feel less alone if you're willing to be brave enough to share vulnerability.
Hmm. And was it a challenge, obviously, when you're dealing with kids, because kids always are, as a filmmaker, you're dealing with a 4-year-old, is it twins, I think, there's all
He's
those
not a
rules.
twin. He's a single kid. Yeah, it's challenging. It's also so rewarding to work with kids. They're so playful and joyous, and you kind of can't get too serious when there's a kid trouncing upstairs in his Spider-Man, slippers and ready to act. So yeah, it is difficult, but it's also really wonderful to have so much play on set, to have so much laughter on set. And, to work with a kid is a beautiful thing.
Making a short film is just as difficult as making a feature length, because even when you're doing a short, because it's tightened up, that's what the challenge, that there's not enough room, especially if they say you only have a certain amount of minutes or time frame, so what was it challenging for you that in doing this project that you can take on to your next project?
Yeah, shorts are difficult because they are so tight. I think something that I'll take with me that's very practical, but my mentor really kept nailing in the idea that you have to set something up and you have to knock it down. You have to set it up and you have to knock it down. And I think in any format, that's a really satisfying storytelling technique. So I'll definitely remember that as I go into features.
Hmm. And even with the storyteller, that what's interesting is that like you have the female protagonist obviously going through some trauma, and you have the kid who's the son of two gay parents. So there's a lot packed in here. You just weren't just telling some story of a babysitter coming in and doing her job. It's like, oh, all the little things that we're seeing around that. So that did that come into play, or was that added in as you wrote the story?
Yeah, I think this program and any chance you get to tell stories is a chance to, normalize things that maybe 10 years ago didn't feel so normal in film and TV. And why is that not normal? So I think all of those things, they're sort of a texture to the film. It's like, this is what the world looks like now. There's gay parents and adopted kids, and let's see what the world actually looks like in Los Angeles.
Hmm. And then just the emotional response that she has, is that something that you did research on? These are not things that people just write in. Somewhere along the line, trauma comes into some part. Was that the case in this?
I think really for me, I'm the child of a therapist, and I'm really good at listening, and I'm not always good at sharing. And I think that's the characteristic that she and I share, is the fear that if we are vulnerable, it won't be taken care of by someone else, or any other number of reasons why you wouldn't want to share your difficult things. So her response is really my response, although I haven't gone through that particular trauma of losing a parent. But it's more, I do know what it feels like to be sad, as I'm sure you do, as I'm sure all of us do. And that's, what the film's about. How do we share these sad things in our life? How do we find community? How do we remember that we're not alone in those things?
Job well done. You were able to get this through. Let's hope to see your next project. Have a good one.
Thank you, Wilson.
Good. So, your film goes along with some of the other films and talks about obviously acceptance, from all areas. So the challenge is obviously when you have this story you want to tell, but with this short film, and you have to tighten it up, how much of a challenge was it to you get the story that you want to tell across in the limited amount of time that you have?
I think, thank you for the question. I think for me, with especially short forms, right? Like you have to be really accurate. You have to be really smart about every scene, every second that you are using, because you just don't have the luxury of time to tell your own story. So thank God that I have such an amazing team, like both with the Disney, both of my mentors, Rachel Young and Jess Bertrell at Disney Live Action, and also my own creative team, like my co-writer, G Wilson, and my producer Xinxi. We from the beginning, we knew the story that we're trying to tell, and we're trying to really like focus on every single scene, and is like to know exactly what that scene is about, and if that serves our theme or not. And sometimes we're confused, and sometimes studios will give you notes, but then I just felt so supported and moved how like my mentors, they kept saying that these are only our notes. We're trying to help you. At the end of the day, take it or not, it is your own voice you have to protect. So make sure you are telling your own story. So all those supports I think really helped us to create that short form story with a very clear theme.
What's your takeaway having done it, and completed it? And a short film is just as long as a feature film, so what's your takeaway having done this with the tools you have and the notes and the mentorship you can bring on to your next project, whether it's a short film or a feature film?
I think definitely collaboration. I think whether it's a short film or a longer form, you're telling your own story, you're sharing your own voice with the help of a lot of other people, right? So how do you communicate with others? How do you communicate with your team and maximize everyone's talent pretty much? I think that is what I learned throughout this journey. From the beginning, I talked with my cinematographer, my editor, like we went through the script scene by scene. We know exactly only one story that we're telling, and then they will give you so many great ideas, and you really embrace those ideas, and those will show on the big screen.
Mm-hmm. And then, my assumption is that this story is a little bit close to heart. But once you get this out of the way, it's sort of like the albatross is off your neck. So now the question is, what do you want to do next? Does it have to be personally close to you for you to, perform? Is it easier now, or does it become difficult?
No, I think definitely that's what I've always trying to do is, like at this certain age, or at this like right now, the theme that I'm exploring is always about my own identity and where I belong, because it's not just about like being Chinese, being Asian, but there's also other stuff, right? Like what does masculinity mean, right? Like what does there's so many different aspects of identity. And for me, growing up, I grew up like always moving from place to place, from China to US, and now I'm back to China in Beijing. In all of my work, I'm trying to figure out a question like in real life that I'm trying to figure out, which is where's home and where do you belong and who are you, right? So for now, I think I still haven't found that answer yet. So I guess until I find that answer, I will keep exploring that theme in my films.
Well, in the meantime, you got this one short film that I think people will watch, people will applaud. And until then, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
Take care.